Today on Locked On Red Wings, we are predicting the opening night lineups.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers too, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. So go check out his other stuff as big roster move the Tigers made today, moving Kenta Maeda, or yesterday by the time you were hearing this, Kenta Maeda to the bullpen. So yeah, big news for Scotty. I know he's really pumped. It's going to be a big episode for you. Just that move alone.
I'm sure it is. It's not like I haven't had complete Kenta Maeda breakdowns in the last 7 days. So, yeah, can't wait for another.
Are we talking about an episode breakdown or a mental breakdown because of Kenta Maeda?
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. All right, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time as well. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. And thanks for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Really simple, straightforward episode. We've talked really about it a lot, just kind of here and there when talking about the free agent acquisitions that the Red Wings have made and who they've traded away, about what this lineup could potentially look like. And once they have all their RFAs signed, they will have a 23-man roster. So I think now is a pretty good time to talk about where everyone is going to be slotting in with the Detroit Red Wings this season as of now. As we know, Yzerman could very well make another move or two heading to free agency, or heading to the season rather. And if and when that happens, we can do this conversation again. That's the beauty of the offseason. We'll have plenty of time.
That's also the thing with roster projections specifically. When I know, speaking for the Tigers side of things, I think I had 3 or maybe even 4 roster projections by the time it was all said and done. The first one you do, July is you're doing this, we're not even close to even training camp starting, nonetheless, the preseason, and then we see them play, we see how the prospects play. That's going to be a huge factor in this as well. And yeah, we can easily have this conversation 1 or 2 more times before opening night, and things will change. I can almost assure you that, whatever we predict today is probably not going to be exactly right.
Exactly. And so without further ado, Scotty, why don't we just get right into it, and we'll start with our forward group, because I think that's the group that has, I think, the biggest conversation, just given, who they got in their top 6, who they let walk in their depth. So let's start there. Let me get the screen up. Thank you, by the way, to Puckpedia for creating Puck GM, a nice little filler. Actually, it's comparable, if not better, than the roster management system Cap Friendly had.
Wow.
Already. They kind of just
already
took that.
You're already forgetting about Cap Friendly, eh? Already in the review mirror, you've already moved on to bigger and better things.
I just love the way this works. Cap Friendly was great and very intuitive, but this is just as much so. So, Scotty.
Yeah, this is really nice for sure.
Let's start with
I think that looks great. I think that's it.
You think this is how the lineup's going to look?
Yeah, I think we're gonna roll in with 6 centers, 1 left wing, and 5 right wings. I think that's the way. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think.
Thanks for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We'll see you tomorrow, baby.
This is how it defaults when you sign your RFAs. I have not touched this yet because I figured we'd leave touching the roster for when we started hitting record. Scotty,
6th line center. Dang.
All right. Who do you want on your top line, Scotty? Come on.
Honestly, so for me, I know we both did this individually, and then now we're seeing how much they line up here. So it'll be interesting to see how similar ours are. I really don't think there's much conversation in the top line. I think it's Cat, Larkin, and Raymond still. Obviously, you get the acquisition of Tarasenko. You bring back Patrick Kane. There's going to be some rumblings about putting Kane and DeBrincat together, as there were last year. I'm sure that they will play together at points plenty throughout the regular season this year. But on opening night, I think that's going to be my top line still.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much, I would argue a lock that this line is going to be the line opening night, just because you look at last season. I mean, that line, if I can find it here on Natural Stat Trick, I had it up earlier, but of course then I was browsing. That line played 278 minutes together at 5-on-5, had a Corsi for percentage of 55%, a Fenwick of 54%, and an expected goals for percentage of 53%. They're basically, I'm sorry, that's the shots for. Their expected goals for percentage, rather, because it's not really presented in a super convenient fashion on Natural Stat Trick, so you got to do a lot of scrolling. If I can find them again. There they are. Had a 51.87 expected goals for percentage. They were far and away your best forward line all throughout the season, and they're the only one on a team that got caved in at 5-on-5 pretty much every shift. That's the only line that pretty much pulled the weight of the offense. You know, Patrick Kane's obviously a very talented forward, and I expect him and Tarasenko to do well together, but that top line, especially with Lucas Raymond coming alive, really, I mean, he was good all season long, but that last few weeks of the season when he just really turned it on, I would not be surprised if this is your top line going in, and I would honestly expect it until and if they begin to falter, then you maybe would you'd see that change. But
yeah, I would be surprised if it wasn't.
Right. And a little note here too as well. I have Raymond here at 8.5 million. You'll also see I have Sider at 8.5 million. That is not a prediction on what I think they'll make. I'm just, again, we're thinking conservatively they could eat up to 17 million combined. So I just split that 17 million in cap space evenly between them. So that's where I just gave them the max of what I think that those two combined will take. But yeah, I completely agree. Top line for sure. Scotty, second line, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think really if you're confident that the top line is Cat, Larkin, Raymond, then there's really zero conversation about what your second line is. It kind of just by default almost that kind of has a negative connotation, but like you look at what's left and it's pretty easy to come to a conclusion on what the second line is going to be. I think that's Comfer up the middle, Kane on the right side, and then Tarasenko is going to be playing on the left. And that's obviously a conversation we've had a lot about his history playing left side, if that's going to be an easy transition for him or not. Did it a little bit in Ottawa, but I think that's kind of the slam dunk second line if you're confident that what we have as the first line is going to be the first line.
Yeah, and I mean, Tarasenko, he talked about it too, and we mentioned it on the podcast. He said that in Ottawa for the first time ever, he played on the left side. What the hell is left side? Left side, and that it took him some time to get used to, and I think they asked Patrick Kane about it too, and he just was kind of non-committal about anything. He was just like, we'll figure it out. But I just don't see a world where you tell Patrick Kane, who's a Hall of Famer, one of the best players to have ever played the game, not even talking about, one of the best Americans, maybe the best American to ever play the game, and telling him, hey, you may have this illustrious career, but we're going to move you to the left side where you're less comfortable. I find that hard to believe. I think if anyone moves to the left, it's going to either be Tarasenko back to his, shot side because he's a left-hand shot, or maybe Lucas Raymond, who goes to his off wing where scoring wingers typically like to play on their off wing, and Raymond is a right shot who likes to play on the right side. But at the same time, I'm not willing to do that right away, given the fact that, again, that top line was so electric with that setup. That's something I would maybe explore if things start off sluggish and you need to change things up. So I'm right there with you. I think Vladimir Tarasenko's on the left, JT Compher's your second line center, and Patrick Kane's on the right side of that. And I mean, the
you got to realize.
Punch.
Also, I didn't mean to cut you off. You also got to realize, how different the opening night lines last year looked from the lines in even January. Nonetheless, March. I'm sure there will be a lot of different combinations and things tried out within that top six. The one thing I think everybody is confident about is at full health, those six guys are pretty objectively, at least again in July, your top six forwards. It's just a matter of how you sort them out.
Correct. And I think the top six is probably the easiest part to break down. I think it's the bottom six that gets a little bit trickier. And Why don't we save that for the second half, or the other half of this break, rather? How's that sound to you, Scotty?
Sounds fantastic, Brian.
All right. Bottom six coming up on segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about Game Time. They're an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Last-minute ticket deals allow you to save up to 60% buying in those last-minute moments for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and so much more. And flash deals save you even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And if you find the same section, or if you pick your section and you let Game Time choose the seats, you could save even more. And if you toggle that neat little feature in their settings, it'll display all the fees up front, so you don't get any as a surprise at checkout. So, take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. How do we add that back in there? There we go. Scotty, bottom 6. Let's just jump right into it, not waste any time. Third line, what do you see going on here?
Yeah, I think this is really the first, question mark of this exercise. I think this is the first time where you're going to see a little bit of maybe differing opinions or whatnot. I think the one thing that's pretty set, at least again on opening night, is going to be Copp up the middle here. And I would be pretty surprised if Michael Rasmussen was not on one of the wings, probably left side, but on one of the wings here. And then I think that's where the big question is what you do with the other wing. I think I have Christian Fischer here, but I also can hear an argument for, like Berger, if you want to add some scoring to that line, maybe if you want it to be, you have two kind of defensive-minded forwards there, so you want to add more of a scoring threat down there. You could do that, or you could run with that quote unquote, like shutdown line, that lockdown line that was good at times last year and was really bad at times last year, and kind of go Rasmussen, Copp, and Fischer together. So I think that's what I have right now. They've played together before. Again, we've seen flashes of them being really solid. But I could hear an argument on a couple different players, honestly, being in that right side. I think this is also the first time where you start going, okay, what if a rookie makes the team out of camp? Is there a possibility that Casper can find his way onto the wing of the third line? Is there a chance that Danielson can do the same? Carter Mazer, same conversation, right? I think this is kind of the first spot that you see that. But if you're going with the NHL proven talent that is here, I think they probably run back that quote unquote shutdown line that was, again, kind of hit or miss, but definitely showed flashes of being pretty solid at times last year.
Yeah, and here's that thing too. I think overall that shutdown line was pretty successful. I mean, they played 25 games together, according to Natural Stat Trick, 210 minutes on the ice at 5-on-5, and they 61% goals for percentage, a 51.5 percentage at expected goals for percentage. So maybe you could argue they overperformed a little bit based on expected goals for, but even that expected goals for, like there weren't a lot of lines on this team that played a significant chunk of change together that actually came away with, good analytical numbers. And they were one of the few that did. The question is, how much scoring do you want to sacrifice in favor of stopping goals against? And I think that you trot this line out there on night one, and you see if they can continue that strong defensive shutdown role that they had. Another part of the reason why Andrew Copp's numbers declined a lot last year as well is he said it in his end of season media availability. A little bit different role was asked of him. So, and I'm not making excuses for his lack of production. You're paying him almost $6 million. He needs to score more than 35 points that he scored. But, at the same token, because I want to see that on Andrew Copp. I don't know if long term that's the best use for him, but that line was successful in that role. But I think that if you trot that line back out there, your fourth line as it stands is a little wonky. And I mean that because you have Joe Veleno, who's a decent fourth line two-way center with a heavily defensive-minded Tyler Mott, and then Jonathan Berggren, whatever side they're playing on either wing, who's offense first. I feel like that line's a little mismatched, and I'm not really sure what usage, what scenarios you would use those players in. And I agree, and I want to talk about this maybe a little bit at the end, because the way the lineup is right now, it's hard to see, somebody outside of Berggren, like a Mazur or a Casper, making the NHL roster just because of how many players they have on their NHL roster right now and where they're centered at. But as it stands right now, this is your leftovers. This is what your fourth line is: Tyler Mott, Veleno, and Berggren. And as much as I love Mott's defensive game and I love Berggren's offensive game, I don't know how they combine on it for an effective fourth line.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the one thing to remember is it is a fourth line, right? Right. You're not gonna. You can really, I don't know if shelter is the right word to use here, but you can really pick and choose rather your deployments for this line. I think there is somewhat of an argument for, hey, we're going to have a defensive-minded forward out there, but we're also going to have a scoring option, so we can kind of, again, it's a fourth line. We don't need to have a true, everybody needs to have the same identity type of thing like our third line is, but at the same time, we don't want the fourth line to get their teeth kicked in defensively, but also be able to score. I know it's not exactly how it works either, but I don't know. I agree with you. It's a little weird. I think a lot of that relies on Joe Veleno's continued development. I think that him taking, if he looks like he did in the first half of last year, I think this actually could be a semi-effective fourth. But I also think, again, like you kind of alluded to there, I think that these are the bottom six as a whole, but specifically, pretty clearly, the fourth line is where you really see some cracks in this, and you see some opportunities for some of the younger guys to maybe make a name for themselves in camp and preseason and fight their way onto this roster. I mean, I know that Berggren now no longer has waiver eligibility, and that makes him, if you're not going to trade him, he's got to be on the NHL roster. I fully understand that, but at the same time, they clearly have shown that they are not, married to the idea of Berger on this NHL team long term. They proved that last year. I think they demoted him from 2 years ago to last year. Like that, I think that that's relatively clear. If he doesn't perform, they have no problem cutting ties with him. And I think that that is kind of a way for, again, a Mazur type of player, maybe a longer shot of Casper or Danielson, but I think that is kind of the opportunity for Mazur to maybe squeak onto this roster.
Yeah, there is opportunity there, and I do also wonder, okay, if you want to have a shutdown line, why not slot Tyler Mott onto that third line to make that a true, sure. Tyler Mott, that's what he excels at. Then you have Michael Rasmussen, who has more offensive upside and is, an offensive forecheck hungry type player to then help. And, like I said, a little bit more offensive upside to then help boost that fourth line scoring. That's a potential as well. I think the top six, like you said, there's opportunity for a lot more change and moving around of players than there are on other lines. I mean, you also see the reality, too, where, Jonathan Berggren's really good on the fourth line. They bump him up to the third line for more minutes to try and score. So there's room for improvement and variation in the bottom six, more so than in the top six. And I think we're lockstep on that.
For sure. Absolutely.
I think that about does it with our conversation for the forwards. Obviously, Mazur and Casper aren't on here, and I will address that a little bit more once we at the end, once we finish out and round out the roster. I'll explain why. And this isn't me not wanting them. I absolutely want them. It's a hard time seeing it right now. So we'll talk about that at the end of segment 3. So stay tuned for that on Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are going to move on to the defensive group now. And I think the first thing we got to do is demote a couple guys. At least one guy.
Yeah, no, I like Seider on the fourth there as a healthy. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, I think that probably makes the most sense here. I mean, I think that the blue line's actually relatively straightforward, which is why I really don't mind doing defense kind of all in one segment here. I'm not sure there's too much wiggle room, to be completely honest. I think the top pair, you're going to look at Seider and Sherratt. The second one, you're going to look at Edmondson and Petrie. And the third, you are going to look at Gustafsson and is Oli Mata doesn't exist anymore? Oh, there he is. Never mind. Yes, so that's that. I don't know. Unless you have a big counter to that, I think pretty straightforward. That's going to be your pairs on opening night, barring a move from now till then.
No, and I agree with you. And for what it's worth, Lagesson here needs to be demoted to non-roster or wherever it goes on here. And you need to bring Albert Johansson up because he's no longer waiver eligible.
Correct.
And now,
yeah, Johansson will be in the combo.
And so now you have 8 defensemen, and that's the defenseman that you currently have.
Right.
This is where it gets really tricky. You carry 8 defensemen, you have 3 goaltenders, and so your opening night roster is, it says 26, but is that right? Because I've done this math before, and I'm pretty sure it's just 23 players on the NHL roster. So the 12 here, 8 here is 20. Yeah, 23. I don't know why it says 26, but there's only 23 guys here. Where's your room for flexibility in bringing up Kasper and Mazur unless you move one of these guys on the bottom? And now, obviously, Yzerman has said they have the opportunity to win their spots, your Kaspers and your Mazurs. So I guess we're talking about this now because my brain just went there. But if no other moves are made, and a move very well could be made, and I believe should be made to free up a roster spot, because I think even though Derek Lalonde likes to run 11 and 7, and we've seen that, so it's very possible that like a Jonathan Berggren or a Tyler Mott could still be a healthy scratch on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't make much sense to just carry 12 forwards and 8 defensemen and 3 goalies. Like one of those roster spots, you either have to go down to 7D or 2 goalies to carry a 13th forward. But that's just where I stand to really give guys like Mazur, who I firmly believe should be on the NHL roster next year, based on what we saw in GR, barring, of course, he adds some muscle because he's a little underweight. But that, we've seen Lucas Raymond come back and add 8 pounds in one offseason. So it's very possible. That's why I don't have them on the roster right now, because I don't see them having the roster space to do it unless they waive a Tyler Mott or if you waive Albert Johansson, I think he's gone. Are you willing to sacrifice guys like that who I think are going to get picked up off waivers to make room for a Carter Mazur or Marco Kasper? And, I think there's a reality where that does happen if they've earned their roster spot. And Yzerman believes they're that significant of an upgrade that you're willing to risk losing a depth piece on, under team control. But it's hard to see right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is what, we've been talking about a lot, and you've done a great job kind of bringing it up at a lot of different opportunities. Like, this is still a really weird roster in terms of construction and personnel, man. Like, as it stands right now on July 12th, like it's still a really kind of wacky combination of positions. And I think that the blue line is where you really, really, really see that. Right now, you could run out there with 4 pairs, like if you wanted to. And I think that that plus 3 goalies makes for a really, really weird dynamic. But I think if you're talking about the starting sticks in order, I do think that it's pretty straightforward there. And obviously there will be opportunities for Johansson to play. And I think in a perfect world, you're carving out a room for him or a spot for him to play almost every night. But I don't think that's possible right now. I don't think that you're going to move off of Mata, and you're certainly not going to move off of Gustafsson. So I think that's, again, on July 12th, I think that's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to emphasize on July 12th, and that this could still change, and kind of hope it does. But let's get back to talking a little bit more about the defensive pairings, because you brought it up, and then I kind of just changed gears randomly because my brain's like that sometimes. Ben Sherratt, Mort Seider, completely, I'm in lockstep with you. That's your top pair. I think you're looking at a situation here where that's really your only choice on the top pair. And I liked watching them play together as well. Your second pair is, I think, where we're going to have our biggest conversation, Scotty. And I think that's because I don't think you have any better options on the second pair right side than Jeff Petrie right now. Despite the fact that I agree that he shouldn't be a second pair defenseman, and that the Red Wings, that's a big hole, right? We've talked about that. I think he's still your best option. That doesn't mean he's a good option, but he's still your best option.
Yeah, I don't know who else you would put there, genuinely. I'm not sure there's anybody else you can put there. Like he might be literally the only player that can play second pair right side. So yeah, I don't love it. I don't even like it. But I'm not really sure you have any other choices as it stands again on July 12th.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree because, Eric Gustafsson, I want to put this to bed right now. He's likely not going to be your second pair defenseman because he got very sheltered usage with a very good New York Rangers team. And you put him on this team on the second pair, and he is not going to fare nearly as well. I know his advanced analytics say that he played really well, but just it's the reverse of the Moritz Seider conversation, where Seider's analytics look bad, but you have to take into account the extreme usage. Gustafsson, well, not nearly as sheltered as Gostisbehere and is an upgrade defensively over him, got really sheltered minutes on a President's Trophy winning New York Rangers team in a third pair role. So he's going to be a third pair defenseman who's going to make your third pair better. But just because the shade of the color is blue on a chart doesn't mean that he's going to be good in every single situation. So I think Eric Gustafsson is a lock for the third pair. But then what are your options on the second pair then? Okay, if Gustafsson's your third pair lock and a power play 2 type guy is either Justin Holl or Jeff Petrie, and Justin Holl, same situation. When he did play last year, was put in extremely sheltered roles with the Detroit Red Wings, and that's why his numbers sometimes looked good, but other times he still looked really poor. So you're looking at a situation where I think your third pair is going to be a rotation of Olli Maatta, Eric Gustafsson, and Albert Johansson, and I just don't see how Justin Holl's going to get into this lineup on a day-to-day basis, and I don't know how he's okay with that. I don't know how this player is still on the team. I understand that Yzerman definitely tried to move him. He never explicitly said, I tried to move Justin Holl, but he said, I tried to move money. I did, after the Woolman trade, and I personally believe that Holl is one of the guys he thought about moving. I don't know how Justin Holl sits there and he might not be okay with it. He might not, but how do you, I just don't get how he's still on the roster. I just don't get it.
Yeah, It's a fine line to walk, man. I mean, then you get into the buyout conversation, which we've already had about 50 times this summer. He's the 8th defenseman on this roster right now.
On a defensive roster that's really not that
on
strong.
A blue line that's not very good. He is the 8th defender.
And so maybe we're looking at it wrong, and they're expecting him to have an increased role this season. I don't know. But I just fear that if
we'll find out on opening night. No one's going to predict that.
Right. So I mean, 8 defensemen. I feel like you got to let one go, or let one of these 3 goalies move. So let's talk about that really quick as well. Ville Husso, Cam Talbot, Alex Lyon. Who's your starter night 1?
It's a great question. Honestly, for me, it's either Talbot or Lyon. Honestly, out of those 3, Ville Husso's my quote-unquote third stringer for whatever that's worth. I think I would probably go... Talbot? I don't know. I think that's one that's maybe sorted out in camp and preseason. I'm not sure that's one that has a guaranteed answer right now in the middle of July, but I think that you brought Talbot in for a reason. You gave him a 2-year deal. He paid him a okay amount of money. I think for as many games as he played last year for a better team, I think it would not shock me if he was the goalie on opening night. But at the same time, Lyon was like the story of the middle of last season, and it wouldn't shock me if they went that direction either.
Yeah, I mean,
it won't be Ville Husso.
I pretty confidently believe it's going to be Ville Husso. No, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty confidently believe it's going to be Cam Talbot.
Good for you.
I'm just messing with you. No, Cam Talbot, I absolutely believe is going to be the starter on night 1, barring some insane training camp development, right? Like, of course, anything can happen. But as of July 12th, I think that's the guy. I mean, he played 50-plus games last year. He had a positive goal saved above expected. That was in the top 20 of goaltenders in the league. I think that's why you brought him in, to help shore up the crease for the next 2 years, because we know Ville Husso, again, it's not his fault. We don't blame a player for getting injured, but it's part of the story. Ville Husso's had injury issues. So while he's 100% right now, and Steve Yzerman said he's good to go, with that injury history in mind, you're a little nervous about whether or not he can stay healthy. Alex Lyon, we saw caught fire and for a month and a half was one of the best goalies in the league, and then came crashing back down to earth with the rest of the team. So you don't know what Alex Lyon you're going to get. You don't know what Ville Husso you're going to get. So I think your best bet now is to bet on the outsider who had a really good year, albeit on a very staunch defensive LA Kings team, but he had a really good year. Honestly, when it comes to backup, I don't know who it's going to be. I know you're pretty confident in Alex Lyon, but Yzerman sounds, and he's lied to us before. Again, like that's what he does in press conferences. He's always going to sing the praises of his player and talk about. But sounds like he still thinks Ville Husso's got it in him, and that last year was a wash. So, but I don't care enough about the backup to argue about it.
Right, he's getting paid almost double what Talbot's getting paid, and like quadruple what Lyon's getting paid. So, I mean, they're not just going to like give up on him overnight. I agree with that, but I don't know. I have not seen anything besides the first 6 weeks of his first season here that leads me to believe that he's going to be a legitimate, part of this crease going forward.
Correct. But so yeah, that's how we have it right now. Just to quickly recap, you guys, as of July 12th, this is our opening night roster, barring any changes. Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, top line. Vladimir Tarasenko, JT Compher, Patrick Kane, second line. Tyler Mott, Andrew Kopp. I'm sorry, that was a change I made. Michael Rasmussen, Andrew Kopp, Christian Fischer, third line. Tyler Mott, Joseph Veleno, and Jonathan Berggren, fourth line. Obviously, those top, we talked about it, those bottom six. Subject to change. We could see it being mixed up a little bit, but we just know what we have in that third line, so that's what we're sticking with at the moment. And then our defensive pairings, Ben Sherratt, Moritz Seider, they were a solid top line, or a more solid top pair down the stretch than Jake Wellman and Moritz Seider were. Now Jake Wellman's gone, so that option's gone. Simon Edvinsson, Jeff Petrie, you don't have a better option at the second pair than Jeff Petrie in our opinion. He's not the best, but he's the best you got. Olli Mata and Eric Gustafsson are a much improved third pair that are going to be able to take slightly harder competition than when Mata was with Gostisbehere. Albert Johansson is going to cycle in there. I don't know what they're doing with Justin Holl. Cam Talbot is your starter. Alex Lyon or Ville Husso will be the backup. I don't know what they're doing with the goalie situation either with three goalies. As of now, we have it with 12 forwards, not allowing Carter Mazur or Marco Kasper to make the team because the roster is maxed out at 23. Barring they beat somebody out and they waive somebody, which could happen. We're not closing the door to that possibility, but this is just what's on the NHL roster at the moment. And 8 defensemen, 3 goaltenders. It's an interesting roster for sure. But this is on July 12th what we have it.
It's a weird one, man. It really is. It's some weird combinations in there. I think the biggest conversation is going forward is going to be what happens with the youth. That we had a whole episode talking about if this was a season where more youth was going to get playing time and you were going to bring up these guys and whatnot. And now we do our opening night lineups and there's no more or less youth than there was at the end of last season. So,
well, Albert Johansson and Jonathan Berggren. I mean, Berggren's like 23. He's
Berggren
not
does not count, but Johansson being a seventh D man, sure. And
Simon Edvinsson, who was not on the team at the start of last season, but you did say at the end of last season. So
at the end, yeah.
Yeah, you said the end. So, I don't know. There's still, I need to see something more. Like, I'm okay with this lineup, but I need to see something more for me to have full confidence. For me to call this offseason
it's considerably better than the lineup in game 82 last season, right? I'm not sure it's like considerably better, like over the hump better than it was to end the season last year. It does look different, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but I think there's still a lot, clearly, as we just talked about for the last 35 minutes, a lot of question marks still, honestly. And there's still a lot of offseason to go. There's still plenty of time to answer said questions. But, having free agency is in the rearview mirror, and there's still a lot of question marks, I think, is interesting.
I think these three right here, Nate Danielson, Marco Kasper, and Carter Mazur, are going to be the three to watch going into training camp, assuming there's no more roster moves trade-wise happening. These three are the three that are going to determine if somebody gets waived and they crack the roster. So I would keep an eye out for those guys. Scotty, any final thoughts?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments. Do you think we got it right? Do you think that we got it wrong? Let us know. So, and programming note, we will not have a Monday episode. I will be out of town for a wedding, and Scotty will be covering the MLB draft. So we're going to be taking Monday off. Big day for him. We're going to be taking Monday off because we record on Sunday, so that's why. And then Tuesday is still a little bit up in the air, but we'll figure that out as we get there.
Yeah, we're both going to be in a plane going to different places on Tuesday, or Monday rather. So we're going to play that one by ear, but yeah, nothing on Monday.
Yep, absolutely. So stay tuned for whatever comes next from Locked On Red Wings. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.